The content creator found a video where a man named Coyote Peterson allows a black widow to crawl over his arm. Watching this made him think that perhaps black widows weren't as vicious as he initially thought, and he considered keeping one as a pet. He found a questionable website selling black widows and decided to make a purchase, wondering why these venomous creatures were even sold as pets. He added one to his cart and was pleasantly surprised by the one-day delivery option. The very next day, he opened his door to find the package had arrived. He brought it to his table, believing this would be the most venomous pet he had kept for his channel. After carefully removing the packing material, he took out the container housing the black widow spider. Upon inspection, he realized he had accidentally ordered a 3-pack instead of just one spider. So now he had 3 black widows to deal with. Wanting to take a closer look, he opened one of the containers to release a spider. The creature appeared disoriented, immediately falling onto its back and revealing the iconic red hourglass shape, a warning sign of its potent bite. When the spider attempted to escape, he quickly returned it to its container, recognizing the need for greater caution. He knew these 3 spiders needed a proper enclosure to spin webs rather than remaining in their tiny containers. He began building an appropriate habitat by covering spray foam with dirt and wood chips to create the background. In the middle, he placed a rock background and attached normal rocks to it with spray foam. His plan was to separate the enclosure into 3 distinct sections: a forest, a cave, and a home interior, to observe where black widows preferred to make their webs and hunt. For the home interior section, he painted a brick pattern on a piece of styrofoam to simulate a wall found in many homes. Once he spray foamed this in place, the background was complete. Next, he focused on creating web building bases by positioning sticks and other materials for the spiders to spin their webs. He started by laying down a simple substrate across the entire enclosure, which he could then customize for each environment. Beginning with the forest section, he placed wood on both sides to allow for web construction between them. He even glued moss hanging from the branches to resemble leaves on trees. He scattered purchased leaves along the bottom to create the appearance of a forest floor covered with fallen foliage, and added a few small rocks, saving most for the cave section. For the cave area, he primarily used rocks. Inspired by a photo of stalagmites, he attempted to carve similar formations from a large rock using a hammer. After some effort, he obtained pieces that resembled stalagmites, which he connected with spray foam and positioned upright in the cave section. He then scattered rocks of various colors throughout this area. Once the spray foam dried, he moved on to the home interior section. He cut carpet-like material to shape and placed it inside. To create furniture for the spider to spin webs from, he built miniature pieces using Lego bricks. He made a lampshade from black bricks, a small couch from red bricks, a chair from brown bricks, and a red and white shelf from the remaining pieces. He jokingly referred to himself as a master builder and supplemented the space with dollhouse furniture. He knew many black widows inhabited houses, so he expected at least one of his spiders would appreciate this environment. His next step involved acquiring plants. He visited Walmart and purchased several small plants for the forest section. At Home Depot, he found draping vines perfect for the cave environment. He also went to Office Max, not for plants, but to print pictures for the home interior's walls. Returning home, he first planted the 2 land plants in the forest section, deliberately choosing a beautiful red plant to complement the coloration of black widows. He disassembled the Home Depot plant and glued the vines to hang from the top of the cave section. He added more moss throughout the forest area, feeling it needed more greenery, and incorporated some dead fern moss in parts of the cave that matched well. He nearly forgot the most important element, the AI-generated pictures for the house interior. After cutting these out, he glued them along the brick wall. The art collection included unusual depictions: a black widow flying with wings, a black widow dancing in a disco room, and a black widow consuming a male after Matinga behavior that actually occurs in nature. Knowing that black widows are cannibalistic toward other females, he recognized the need to separate his 3 spiders to prevent them from eating each other. He measured and cut acrylic sheets to serve as dividers. Lastly, he installed a reptile fogger, which releases fog when a dial is turned. Since black widows prefer high humidity for web construction, this would encourage them to build quickly and effectively. With the enclosure complete, it was time to release the black widows into their new home, though he felt apprehensive about this step. He placed the first spider in the forest section, the second in the cave area, and the third in the home interior. He noticed the one in the forest section immediately began exploring, eventually reaching the enclosure's roof. There, the spider started walking around with a strand of silk trailing from its abdomen, already beginning to build a web. He explained that spiders do this to catch prey, and black widows specifically produce some of the strongest silk through specialized glands. He left the spider to continue its web construction. Upon returning the next day, he opened the enclosure's top and observed that the spider had built its web in a small crevice, rather than utilizing the elaborate forest area he had created. At least the spider had established itself, which meant he could now test various food items to determine its preferences. Starting small, he offered tiny mealworms barely the size of his fingertip. Using tweezers, he dropped a mealworm directly into the spider's web. The insect immediately began struggling to escape, activating the spider, which emerged briefly only to ignore the mealworm and attempt to flee the enclosure. The black widow tried to escape by webbing down the side of the table to the floor, but he managed to capture it in a container where he offered another mealworm, which the spider again refused. Seeing that this black widow wasn't interested in mealworms, he tried feeding small crickets to the second spider in the cave area. He recalled placing this spider on a plastic lid with an existing web, but it hadn't moved for 2 days, leading him to wonder if it had died. When he introduced the crickets, one jumped toward the spider, startling it awake a positive sign of life. However, when he tried to bring the cricket closer, the spider became frightened and retreated into the cave. He eventually found it had somehow escaped to the top of the enclosure. Despite another attempt to offer a cricket, the spider remained uninterested, so he returned it to its plastic container. With 2 spiders refusing food, he would normally have tested a third food source larger crickets in the remaining spider. Unfortunately, he revealed the third spider had completely disappeared from the home interior section in the 2 days since its placement. Not only did he have 2 spiders that wouldn't eat, but the third had escaped and was somewhere in his garage. Feeling this was the worst idea he'd had for a video, he decided to salvage the content by allowing a black widow to crawl on his arm, similar to what he'd seen Coyote Peterson do. He invited his mother to film the attempt, explaining his unusual pet choice. She expressed clear disapproval when shown the spider in its container. He began by trying to coax the spider onto his sleeve, planning for it to eventually crawl onto his hand. However, the spider simply clung to the container's edge without moving forward. Realizing this approach wasn't working, he transferred the spider to a piece of cardboard. After mustering his courage, he positioned the cardboard near his hand, counting down nervously and appealing for divine protection. The experience was intensely stressful, with his heart racing rapidly. In conclusion, he acknowledged this was likely the most foolish pet he had ever kept, but noted it would be an interesting addition to his collection.